Hello and welcome to day 154 of the Not Alone Today chronological Bible reading plan. Today we'll be reading 2 Kings chapter 14 from verse 23 to 29 and then also reading Jonah from chapter 1 to chapter 4. We're still using the New International Version.
2 Kings 14 verse 23 from verse 23. In the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel, became king in Samaria, and he reigned 41 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. He was the one who restored the boundaries of Israel from Lebo-Hamath to the Dead Sea, in accordance with the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, spoken through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath-Ephar.
The Lord had seen how bitterly everyone in Israel, whether slave or free, was suffering. There was no one to help them. And since the Lord had not said that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash.
As for the other events of Jeroboam's reign, all he did and his military achievements, including how he recovered for Israel both Damascus and Hamath, which had belonged to Judah, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jeroboam rested with his ancestors, the kings of Israel, and Zechariah, his son, succeeded him as king.
Jonah chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me.
But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord.
Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. All the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship.
But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us so that we will not perish."
Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?"
He answered, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land."
This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so.
The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, "What should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us?"
"Pick me up and throw me into the sea," he replied, "and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you."
Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him.
Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Chapter 2. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, "In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You heard me into the depths, into the very heart of the seas, that the current swirled about me. All your waves and breakers swept over me. I said, I have been banished from your sight, yet I will look again towards your holy temple." The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me forever. But you, Lord my God, brought me up from the pit. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will make good. I will say, salvation comes from the Lord.
And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah unto dry land.
Chapter 3. Then the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you.
Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord and went to Nineveh. Now Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. The Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth.
When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat down in the dust. This is the proclamation he issued in Nineveh. By the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let the people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Who knows? God may yet relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish.
When God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened.
Chapter 4. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord. Isn't this what I'd said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live.
But the Lord replied, Is it right for you to be angry?
Jonah had gone out and sat down at a place east of the city. There he made himself a shelter, sat in his shade, and waited to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord provided a leafy plant and made it grow over Jonah to give shade for his head to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. When at dawn the next day, God provided a worm which chewed the plant so that it withered. When the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. He wanted to die and said, "It would be better for me to die than to live."
But God said to Jonah, Is it right for you to be angry about the plant?
"It is," he said, "and I'm so angry I wish I were dead."
But the Lord said, You have been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals? This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So today we have read the book of Jonah in its entirety, as well as 2 Kings 14:23 to 29. And just by reading 2 Kings 23 to 29, we learned about the tenure of Jeroboam II. This is different from the Jeroboam son of Nebat, who was the first king after the split of the northern and southern kingdoms. But during his reign, we were told that there was a word of the Lord that came through Jonah, son of Amittai, a prophet from Gath-Ephar. And that is why we are reading the book of Jonah now. Not necessarily because the message of the book of Jonah was about Israel. Rather, it's about Nineveh, an Assyrian city that the Lord sent Jonah to. So the book of Jonah itself then is about that story of the message God gave Jonah for the city of Nineveh. 4 short chapters that basically tells us of Jonah's initial reluctance and eventual response to the message that God gave him. And the people repented, and God had mercy, and Jonah became angry, and the Lord asked him a question. So the book ends with a question mark, one of the 2 books in the Bible that ends in a somewhat inconclusive manner, because we don't have a response from Jonah on the question that God asks him. Shouldn't I have more concern for this country with lots of people and lots of animals? The answer to that, we don't know. So in chapter 1, Jonah fled from the Lord when God gave him that message, and he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish instead, going opposite direction of where God wanted him to go. On the ancient map, Tarshish and Nineveh are 2 different locations. And so it seemed, geographically speaking, that Jonah headed in the opposite direction of where God wanted him to go. As a result, God brought a great storm on the sea, and it eventually became clear that the reason for the storm was Jonah's disobedience to his own God, the God of Israel. And he was thrown into the sea so that there can be calmness, and swallowed by a big fish that would take him eventually to where God has always wanted him to go. While inside the belly of the fish, chapter 2, he prayed. And chapter 2 is about that beautiful prayer that Jonah prayed. In chapter 3, when the Lord gave him a second chance, the word of the Lord came to him a second time, and he went ahead to deliver the message, walking through the city of Nineveh for 3 days. And indeed, the people responded positively to his message, fasted, and repented. And when God saw their response, the Lord relented and did not bring on them the destruction that he had threatened. In chapter 4, it was Jonah's anger at the Lord's compassion on the people of Nineveh, because Jonah wanted them to be judged. And the Lord engaged Jonah in a conversation to help him see why it is right and just for him to show mercy and compassion to these people who have repented. And Jonah seemed to believe that it is not right because they deserved to be judged. And the back and forth ends with that question in the last verse, which Jonah did not answer. What stood out to you from the first part in 2 Kings 14:23 to 29?
The part that stood out to me was verse 26 to 28. How that in spite of how the Israelites deserved what was going on with them, the Lord still saw them and still saw that there was no one to help them and help them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash. And that attests to the mercy and faithfulness of God, in that even where we are faithless, He remains faithful. What about you?
Yeah, same thing. And then the curious mention of Jonah, son of Amittai, in verse 25. I mean, if we were not reading this chronologically, someone could have easily glossed over that point and not quickly link it. Yeah. Understandably so. Yeah, I mean, we are in that point where we are seeing the same name come up, but referring to different people. I mean, this is happening in the tenure of Jeroboam, and we know that it's another Jeroboam. We've met like 5 different Obed-Edoms since we started reading from First Kings till now, and Chronicles. So yes, but yeah, that's the same Jonah, and that is why the book of Jonah that we then went on became a fitting next book to put in that chronological plan. Jonah chapter 1, what stood out to you?
I'm going to do mine collectively because the book is quite short. So the lesson that stood out to me in the book of Jonah is that all of us, or let's say most of us, struggle in our calling of God. Like, it will be fair to look at Jonah's story and say, God has saved the people and now you're angry. But if we think about our own reaction, truthfully, if we really think about it, when we see wicked people prospering and people that are enslaving, that like, for example, you hear about people involved in child abuse prospering, being given Nobel Prize awards, and in your head you think, how can this be possible? it links up to how Jonah reacted when God said he was going to save the people of Nineveh. And so I'm just trying to say that Jonah was not a bad prophet. He reacted in his own way to what God has said. And it is much important that Jesus mentioned him in Matthew 12, 38 to 42. Jesus did not confirm whether it's good or bad, but he did say that he would also rise up 3 days, just like Jonah did, and that the men of Nineveh will stand up with the people on this day, and that. But now that the people can see that someone greater than Jonah is here, alluding to the greatness of Jonah in spite of his failure to accept what God was doing, or to be consoled in God's mercy. He still felt that the people of Nineveh should be punished because of their wickedness. But that wasn't the core of his book or of his story. The core is that God is a God of mercy. He rehabilitates. He shows compassion to whom he will show compassion to. In chapter 3, verse 9, when the king of Nineveh said everyone should not eat or drink, then he said in verse 9, who knows, God may yet relent and with compassion turn from his fierce anger, so that we will not perish. Just because of his acceptance of the prophecy, God then relented. Is a God of mercy. So in our day-to-day lives, when we see violent and wicked people prospering, it's not to wish evil on them or ask God to destroy them, but ask them to come to a place of relenting, right? Of relenting and compassion, so they can turn from their wicked ways and turn back to God. And that's what stood out to me in this book. What about you?
I think just that contrast between Jonah and Jesus in this narrative. Of course, Jonah he didn't care about the Ninevites, and yet the Ninevites responded positively to his message. Jesus cared about the people to whom he was sent, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, but they did not care about him. If anything, they sought to eat that he was crucified. And yet, of course, that's why Jesus would say on that great day, even the Ninevites would rise up in judgment to bear witness against the people that rejected him, those who saw him and still rejected him in that sense. So yeah, that contrast kind of stood out to me. In terms of the character of Jonah himself, the curious detail of how the book ends with an unanswered question makes me just continue to wonder, what sort of a person is he? Understandably, he's somewhat justified in his reaction, but be that as it may, when God will then go on to such great lengths, even to the point of giving him a living parable in the tree that rose by the power and providence of God one night, gave him shade, and then died and withered the next day, and he became angry about that. And God is passing the message across to him to say, I'm God. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. And here am I being concerned and compassionate on such a great city. And yet here you are refusing to fall in line with my will and my desire. Of course, if we look at it, eventually Nineveh is part of the Assyrian kingdom. Assyria would be the ones to go and enslave the Israelites. And so if we look at it indeed in the full scope of history, maybe Jonah had foreseen all that and said, these people they are not worth it.
They are dead people.
They are really, really terribly bad people. And yet you say you want to have mercy on them. But again, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and have compassion on whom I will have compassion, says the Lord again and again through the corpus of Scripture. But we'll turn the page and move on day 155 to the prophecy of yet another prophet. We call them minor prophets, not because they are not relevant prophets, but because their prophecies are quite short. Sure. And so over the next couple of days, we'll be with Prophet Amos. And so join us on day 155 as we begin the book of Amos. But till then, just remember,
you're not alone
today. God bless
you.